think we then have all of our members present, and it's a couple minutes after 4. So if staff is ready, we can call the meeting to order. This is the City of Bloomington Capital Improvement Board, and it is Wednesday, April 19th. For those of you who might be seeing this on some taped version in the future. Our agenda was posted online as is required by the Open Door Act. We have the agenda. I think we have it up on the screen here in a second. So those of you that might be able to view it as we walk through the items today. First, let's do a roll call. And Kaiser?
Yeah. Nick Nyson,
Here.
Valerie Pena,
Yes.
Tom West,
Here.
Doris Sims,
Here.
Sarah Valley Davidson. Here.
We have all 5 of our members present, 4 in person, 1 remotely.
Yeah, Valerie needs her video on. Normally when we do this.
Yeah, I can't, it won't let me. It says that. Oh, there it goes. Okay.
Oh, there we are. Okay.
Said the host was holding it where I couldn't, so.
All right, there we go.
Good to see you, Valerie.
The next item of business for us is approval of our minutes from our April 5th meeting. Have you all had a chance to review those? And when ready, I'll accept the motion. So moved. And a second. Farrah says she will second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Our next section is governance. These are some things that we have still been working through. One of those was posted for 2 weeks as is required to change our bylaws. I'm going to ask Beth Kate to walk us through the bylaw change, and you all have seen it sent out to you and reviewed. After Beth gives us a summary, we can address the item. It's a possibility for approval today if we so desire.
Sure. Thanks. Almost evening. So this is a pretty brief change to Article 5, Section 7. Right now, if there is a vacancy that occurs in the board of directors, the bylaws provide that it will be filled by temporary appointment made by the board of directors itself. And then that person would fill the vacancy for the rest of that unexpired term. And then the original appointed authority would appoint a new person for a new term. Based on some interest by the board in amending that to the proposed change to Article 5, Section 7, that effectively the original appointer, whoever that is, whether that's lawyer, whether it's city council, go ahead and make the temporary appointment for the remainder of the expired term. So that's it. That's the extent of the change.
Okay. Do you have any questions from the board members on that bylaw change?
Nope.
Okay. Then a motion to accept would be appropriate if anyone so desire to do.
I'll motion to accept the proposed language as written.
Second. Motion by Sarah and a second.
I'll second that.
Doris did. Doris or value third.
Okay, all right, no problem.
We have a second. Okay, any other questions about that item? Then we'll take a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Also under governance, we had some continuing updates to a diagram that if you don't mind putting on the screen, guys, this is kind of how we see the CVCI fitting in with the administration, the redevelopment commission, and other entities. I think this is still a work in progress as this entity is new enough that trying to make sure we understand the best, most efficient, but effective way to have us do some work that can city out is our goal. So if you don't mind showing before, there's 2 versions of this. This is what the reporting structure was when the CBCI did not exist, and then we'll show you how we think it reports based on that. So would one of the staff members like Beth, or would you like to walk us through this? Whomever crafted it for us, would you like to walk us through the previous structure first, sort of where we stand before the CBCI was created?
Okay. So yeah, we can go back to that a little bit. So what you're there, sorry, is the various approvals and interactions between the players before the CBCI was created with respect to advice and input, decision making, approval of transactions, and so on. So with respect to there, we can see that before CBCI, a lot of what CBCI will be doing in terms of forwarding city priorities and projects would have been assignment of those projects to city staff. So internal with for Hopewell in particular, over here at the steering committee, providing advice and input and having communication kind of in both directions with the administration and so on. And then also from the mayor to the RDC, if there are RDC owned pieces of real estate involved in anything like Hopewell, obviously, the mayor and the administration would make recommendations to the RDC with respect to the disposition of that property. Provide administrative support and guidance, and there are some appointments to the RDC as well. And then city council also has appointment authority with respect to the RDC, a couple of its members, and approval of certain property purchases if they're over $5 million or longer than 3 years. So that was the landscape before CBCI. And I know there are a lot of lines, there are a lot of colors. Bear with us. Now the CBCI in place, just like I'm going to stick with football for a second, now let's sort of go left to right. The steering committee is still having communications that we saw before with the mayor and the administration, but also similarly with the CBCI board. So they'll be communicating directly with you all. The appointment authority to CBCI is also split between the mayor and the city council, which you can see here. And in terms of administrative support and guidance, I'll say more about that when we get to the support agreement that we drafted. But there is administrative support that's going to be provided in exchange for the services of the CBCI. That will be taking the place essentially of some internal staff that would otherwise have these projects. The bylaws for CBCI provide that the mayor and the council have to approve of certain bylaws changes to the CBCI bylaws. The projects are now being effectively by the administration and by the mayor's office to CBCI the way that it would have to internal staff before. Things have not really changed in terms of the mayor and the administration's relationship with the RDC. But the RDC, to the extent that there is any real estate transaction with CBCI, that would have to be approved by the RDC as well. So that's what we're seeing there. Conceivably, TIF funds and TIF funds are going to be transmitted at some point to CBCI as well as help fund projects, or really any funds that may be sees or then the RDC would have to approve those. And then with city council, you're seeing again the appointment authority to the CBCI board. Everything stayed the same with respect to the relationship with the RDC. And then the as far as the CBCI bylaws goes, in addition to bylaws changes that have to be approved by the city council, the bylaws themselves provide for city council to have an annual budget presentation and approval of the annual budgets of the CBCI and approval of property purchases over $5 million, kind of mirroring the way it approves that level of property transaction to purchase by the RDC. Did that make sense? That was a lot. It wasn't entirely linear.
So this is great, and I really like the color coding. The only thing that I just want to mention is that what is in our packet is not there.
Yeah.
And actually, some of, like, my biggest question was going to be, why is Hopewell Steering Committee not also advising the mayor's administration? Because that's what it looks like in the packet. So you'll just need to update it. The package. The things that are different is that in our packet, we don't have that upward kind of point of Hopewell steering to mayor's administration. And then also there's some minor changes in the, like, in the one here, it says like appointment, we'll say appointment authority, but not but this specifies the number of members that, the mayor and the city council, have the, authority to appoint, so just,
No, thanks for pointing that out, and we were making a couple of
Yeah,
things on the
yeah,
fly,
thanks,
so.
yeah.
So we'll be sure to circulate to everyone this updated version and
Right.
post that.
There's a typo.
Yeah, so that, yeah, thanks.
Yes, I am. Within you, that you can leave.
Okay, other feedback or comments, questions from the board about the diagram that is the most current and updated, the one that's on the screen.
One other comment, I'll just make kind of general comments, is that the goal here, and we had the same goal when we were drafting the bylaws to begin with, but you see it reflected in here is for lots of input, lots of transparency, lots of the roles of various folks who ordinarily have some input into approving funding, into approving real estate transactions and so on, while allowing for the CDCI to kind of operate in a smooth way, so we can actually lead forward projects without undue restraints. So that's the balance.
There are questions or observations? I doubt this is the last time we'll see a change to the document as we learn more about how we can be helpful and where the best use of our time and energy will be, but we at least are refining it as we move forward. So thank you for taking time to walk us through that. I know at some point the staff would ask this question, I would if I were you. When do we get to do less so that you all can do more? And I think the answer will be forthcoming as we continue to learn more from you, making sure we kind of get downloaded as much information as you have so that we can take on more of the heavier lifting, if you will, never excluding you because you all are going to be key to the projects moving forward, but maybe doing more work than we're capable of at the moment while we're still in the learning mode. Mary Hamilton, do you have anything to add to the diagram or any feedback about the way you think the organization will interface with all those others on that chart?
One thing that popped in my head was reminding us that city council has representatives on the local steering committee. They're actually involved in that too, they'll get occasional reports, so it's just a long way to draw one. We're a circle around that. And thank you. I know you're sensitive, we are too, to the kind of transition period as we're building out capacities. We some months.
Thank you. Okay, Beth, you want to roll with the draft support agreement and any updates we have there?
Sure. So in your packet, there's agreement between the city and CBCI that effectively reflects the sort of exchange of value. CBCI is taking on some work in order again for city projects. And in exchange for that, the city is going to provide certain levels of administrative support for those activities. This is similar to agreements we have, support agreements with some other boards. And it's pretty basic. Unfortunately, I think the transition from Google Docs to Word included a few little glitches in the formatting, so sorry about that, but generally, I think it's pretty readable. So one thing that this does do is allow us more easily to share information between the parties that would be deliberative, that would then bring it within the scope of the exception to the Open Records Act, to which CBCI, by virtue of its bylaws, is sort of operating under. But part of that law is an exception to disclosure requirements for material that is internal, either intra-agency or inter-agency deliberative material. And with this contract, it's just a more explicit interagency relationship. And so, for example, if there is deliberative material that's going back and forth, then it will be protected disclosure before it's time. So So that's one benefit to this, that this really documents effectively the sort of support that we're going to be providing. You've already seen the staff liaison work that Kais has been doing. We've provided some support in terms of answering questions. We continue to do that over here. And various other types of staff support for the time being, and as CBCI gets potentially some of its own staff down the road, then obviously we can further adjust this.
Okay, this is not an action item today. This is a kind of an update on where we are. We obviously want to review this and make sure we're comfortable with it. And with that, I'll open it up for questions or feedback to Beth so we can move that into her court to make any adjustments as we see might be necessary. Anyway. Yeah, Beth, I've got a question.
Well, yes, I'm sorry, before you do, John, can I just say, there is a typo here that doesn't need to be fixed, the internal reference in that first paragraph. Then the references to paragraph 10 or 12, as we move things around, it should be 9 and 11 instead of 10 and 12, so sorry about that. Sorry.
I'm sorry. In the first whereas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth sort of section down, it discusses the a relationship with the RDC pursuant to a code, but I don't remember what that code is. Probably did when I was on the RDC.
It's a reference to certain types of activities for rehabilitation property that are listed in the code that the RDC can get involved in. So hold on, I can pull that.
Well,
It's reflected in the bylaws, actually. These are newer individuals and those bylaws. But hold on. Did you have a particular question about it, or you just?
no, I just wanted what it referenced. So it references the rehabilitation of property, which is fine. I don't need to see the code. I just wonder what it was referencing.
Okay, yeah, it is, and I can send you that provision. after this call.
No. And then the other, this might be a typo or it might be legal lingo that I just don't get. In section 6, the fifth line down says appropriate person. A typo or
Sounds like a typo to me.
two periods at the end of that paragraph.
We'll clean all this up when we all sign it.
All right. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Other feedback.
So how long is the agreement?
I read it to the end of 2024.
Yeah.
And then I get
Yeah, we wanted to go ahead and provide sort of an initial agreement and, renew on whatever terms make sense after more time and more developments happen. CBCI.
There was a reference in the previous discussion about the organization of this body and how it interfaces with other groups. And I heard go to the city council for budget approval. And I suppose that would mean if we are asking for general fund dollars, that would be necessary. If we were asking for redevelopment commission dollars, that's a fair way to read that. So we have an actual requirement to update the city council with a budget annually, even if the budget is 0.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do we have a requirement by virtue of the way we were to report to the city council a budget, even if that budget is zero? Are we going to report the redevelopment commission money we spend as well? And I'll just want some clarification on that down the road. You don't have to answer today. I know the budget.
Yes, but I'll double check.
And how we might do that, as I know that the city's process for budget goes through a series of reviews and presentations to the city council. Would we be required to come to that meeting on some given night and make that report, or whatever you all tell us we have to do? Just would like to know that when you get a chance to flesh that out for us.
Okay. I can also, John, just for a little more detail to add to this report, example, statute. That particular subdivision is providing financial assistance for neighborhood development corporations that can help construct and rehabilitate commercial property in the area. So there are a few parts of this statute that are of the sort of things that we thought ultimately CBCI might be interacting with.
And so potentially all parts of it may apply.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
Sarah.
I just had a question about, number 7, attorney's fees, because, and I understand that this is boilerplate language. But I'm just kind of curious if this ever came to the point that there would be any kind of legal action or disagreement between the mayor's office and the board, how exactly this would work, because this is saying that if any action is brought to enforce the agreement, the prevailing party shall be entitled to recover reasonable cost of enforcement. But also in 6, the city is paying insurance and indemnity for the board. So I'm just kind of confused, like exactly, how you imagine in that hypothetical solution there, hypothetical, like what that actually ends up meaning in practice.
Well, aren't you our attorney too? I mean, by the agreement,
Yeah,
so we can split yourself.
Yeah, it's like a little bit odd to me because it seems like a weird clause to have in.
It's pretty boilerplate.
Yeah.
That first, at some point you may not be actually covering those costs. I mean, there are some now, that's the usual. Necessarily extend as far as they do. And believe me, I've been more than happy to take that number 7 in-house here. But I think, really, I think this is steeply unlikely for a number of reasons, but if it ever came to a dispute that went to courts, which is what this is really sort of reflecting, it wouldn't be us. At that point, we have to developed. And the fact that insurance might be paid for, that would be them, that might still come back to have some kind of charge, potentially the city or vice versa. Or it would be, those are rates going forward, right? If the insurance company absorbs costs of defense, but then that into their calculations as to what rates the city pays for insurance down the road. Does that make sense?
Yeah, is that a clause that's in kind of all of the boards?
I mean, the sample that I've seen,
Yeah.
yes, but again, I personally think this is so unlikely that.
Yeah, it just seems like, it seems so weird that it would kind of get into an odd circular kind of legal situation that I'd rather in there, but.
Okay, well, I'm happy to take that suggestion on board. I don't know that it, again, really matters.
I'm not a lawyer, so I'm just pretending to be.
Everything about my policy review is that the law is for everything. And that contracts and everything else really should be intelligible to the non-lawyer, so.
Okay. Any other feedback to share? Hearing none, Beth, if you don't mind taking into consideration some of the things mentioned, and I don't believe this requires 2 weeks it's just an agreement between us and the city. It's not a bylaw change, so we could conceivably hear and approve this support agreement at our next meeting.
Yeah.
If everybody's comfortable with that, we'll send out the updated draft well in advance so that you can take a look, see if there's anything else. So we'll put that on the next agenda for consideration. I did notice that there's a PO box left blank for me. I suppose we have to establish that at some point. I certainly don't want it to be my home address.
Well, I was thinking we should write that in, but not your home address.
Yeah, it'll be a no. Thank you for that recommendation.
Okay, just trying to help.
I know you're. Okay, then we're going to move out of the governance and into the meat of the agenda. This is a section with several topics related to the Hopewell development, mostly on updates that are not ready. There's no action item amongst these, rather they're updates for all of the board and for the public that are watching. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deb Koontz, and she'll talk about our owner's representative update that we're up to next.
Great. Well, since the last time that we met, we have had second interviews with 2 candidates. And following those interviews, the selection team had several follow-up items. We have now provided those follow-up items to the selection team. We'll be meeting again next Tuesday. That does include a reference check, which is still ongoing. Getting return calls can be challenging. And so if all goes as planned, after next Tuesday, the selection team will then make a recommendation to the mayor, which then ultimately goes to the RDC at this point, acknowledging that at some point that contract could potentially be shifted over to the CBCI, but initially it will go to the RDC. So, but we are looking at two specific candidates.
And just for general consumption, the members of this board that are on the selection committee, review committee are myself, John West, and Valerie Payne. And then their staff members also present in this room. And the RDC representative is Cindy Canary. So that's just for more public advantage of who else is involved in this review process. Questions about that item? Okay. Next one, Deb, is the Hopewell RFI 1 update.
Great. I'll just give a high level, and then John's going to take it and give updates on the next couple of items. And I think he has a slideshow that we'll pull up. But in general, you may recall that the first RFI for development was issued. They were due on April 12th. And we did receive several that are under consideration. So there is a review team that has been put in place, which you are also represented by John and Doris. And so they have, we have taken everything under advisement. Nothing is being publicly released, obviously, at this time, because it is part of the development deal. And we'll just see if there's some good things to consider. So I'm really intrigued by what I see. And so we'll see how it goes. And then many staff are on it, plus Cindy Canary is part of it from the RDC. John? Oh, let's see. I think Kaisa is going to bring up the slides.
We're going to talk. So just as we kind of keep going with this and talking to the community and developers, and Alex told you about a roadshow at the Urban Land Institute a few weeks ago. It's important that all of you have these updates too, and want to keep sort of sharing not the same information, but just consistent things that we're talking to people about. So what are the tangible things going on at Hopewell? So for us to say, here's what's happening. Visually, people can see that the hospital is basically gone. The core building and the parking garage are still there, but what other tangibles are there? We've got phase 1 East construction bidding going, and we'll start that the first reconstruction this year. We've got the Ready grant that is being finalized. That was for the portion of Jackson Street from First to University Street, which is basically behind the core building, which I'll show you. Well, this would be Jackson Street right here. We go in front of the addition of the core building.
Which is a new street.
Yeah.
So Jackson is a brand new street.
In front of the hospital, ribbons there. Just got the RFI responses back. RFI 1 is Deb mentioned. We'll work on number 2 to go out late spring, summer, and that's for blocks 1, 2, and 3, which is the phase 1 East section between Kroger and the Legacy Hospital there. And then the core building, you all have those design images in your packet. I wanted to just show you this one on the slide here. That's a 38-unit development. It's going to be a low-income housing tax credit project. This is on to the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. Just for clarity, the smaller building, you basically see 2 buildings there that are joined in the middle, but the smaller building is the historic core building. what you see more prominently is the addition. So that's a 4-story addition that will have about 20 units in it out of the 38. So go to the next slide there. So just on the master plan, we've got, the theme out there was to create a diverse community by providing a variety of housing types, different income levels, and to expand options for all the households that are going to be there. And we talk about affordability, we need all types, so the market rate, the traditional affordable, which is 80% or less of that area median income, and the workforce is that 80 to 120% that we want to see there as well, proximity to so many different employment centers in the area, in the region, not just in Bloomington. And we will see like at least a 20% affordability goal across different housing types. And then we want to maintain neighborhood scale at the edges, and go to the next slide, see what that means in real time. This is from the master plan. So the bottom right corner of the screen is McDowell Gardens neighborhood. Basically looking at a view northeast. You're going to go straight in the middle of the top of the screen. So the core building you can see in the middle there. The whited out buildings that show 2 stories and 2 stories, those are not part of the project property, but you can see the different housing types that the master plan visualized across the site. So the lower rise townhomes, single family, and lower rise multifamily on blocks 8, 9, and 10, which is that RFI that we have out, or that we have responses back for now. So those 3 sections that you see kind of in front there next to the Bill Gardens, and that goes up sort of in height and density from there. And of course, phase 1 east as the 2 multifamily, you see the Beeline Trail. Kroger is that white structure across the tree line in the beginning. And then this these we made available to you. It's in the master plan, but this chart just shows the distribution of units as the master plan laid out on the different acreage across the site for all the different units. Of course, the 4th quadrant of the phase 1 east property, that's where Centerstone is. And then the gray structure right to the left of number 4, that's the parking garage, to give you some orientation of what the housing types would be. So that's just a reference. That's an important piece of information. Not that it's visual, but it's a really good thing to have kind of on your person if you're talking to people about how we would distribute units across the site.
It's probably also important to, you might hear us use the term, this is 1,000 units. 1,000, we always use that term. So we're rounding up and we know we're on the high side, because if you look at the column that says residential units, the total there is 580, 940. That's what the master plan originally identified. But we know there's more opportunity for density there. So when you hear us talking to developers, we're going to consistently say it's 1,000 units or more.
With that, there, Cassie.
Can you leave that slide up for just 1 second?
Sure.
Oh, maybe the next one will do this too. So when you all reference phase 1 of the RFI responses, that's blocks 8, 9, and 10, correct?
The first RFI that we got responses back for now, the one that was due back on April 12th, that's for these 3 blocks.
Okay. And then phase 1 east is an infrastructure project that incorporates blocks 1, 2, and 3.
That's right. So phase 1 east infrastructure is this grid here. And then the next RFI that we send out for development proposals later this spring or summer will be these 3 quadrants here.
Okay, so that'll be phase 2 development opportunities.
Yeah, we're calling like RFI 1, RFI 2.
Okay.
We could phase. It's a little confusing because we started with phase 1 east. And now we're starting a different place when we talk about development. So
Hence the reason for my question.
yes, it's a
I
fair
thought
question.
I understood it, but I thought I would also clarify for everybody watching that's what we refer to, and that the first RFI responses are for blocks 8, 9, 10.
Some of the master plan references parcels. So sometimes if you do look at some older documentation, you'll see parcel 1, parcel 2. Well, the reality is these are blocks for us because we'll have smaller parcels within the block. So we've really tried hard to center on a block because we'll have potentially multiple developers could be within one block. And then, yeah, this whole notion that the RFIs and how they release, you started with 8, 9, and 10. That is probably the least dense area, in part because it's got single family. So if you think about where we started, that's where we started with the single family areas, kind of the less dense area. When we go to blocks 1, 2, and 3, which will be RFI 2, that is going to be our densest area. So over 330, if you look at just 1, 2, and 3, 4. It's also where the hot spot is for the greenway. It's also on the B line, right? It's probably some of the prime property, location, location, location.
So this graphic describes parcels where you are interchanging that with the word blocks.
Yes,
That
yeah.
matches the same numerology 1 through 10 is blocks in your
In our new lingo, yeah, and we'll start adjusting these titles. This literally slide comes from the master plan, but we need to make the adjustment for when we present it, so we'll do that going forward.
Thank you.
I just wanted to- Oh, sorry, yes, go ahead.
Can you point out where the
Core building is right here. And so from an ownership question, good segue, we own 8, 9, and 10, and 1, 2, and 3 right now. What will transfer to us by the end of the year are 4, 5, 6, and 7. That's where the hospital, legacy hospital building is, in the core building of the parking garage.
So then the front of the core building is shared from Broadway to the new Jackson Street.
Still gonna maintain the historic entrance, but the addition kind of mirrors the historic front, so it will have 2 entrances. Or I should say the accessible entrance will be off of Jackson right here. The master plan kind of contemplated what the addition might look like. So you'll have sort of an accessible entrance here, because this is still a lawn that has a slope, so they'll have 2 entrances.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. We'll go ahead there, guys. So just another visual here, on what's funded, what's not. You see the Jackson Street, to be a visual that I was talking about earlier. And this is again, just an important slide. When we talk to the development community, we know we have a ways to go on infrastructure funding and getting stuff paid for, but we have incident stuff, big arteries starting that are already paid for here. And yeah. Need to keep at it, and certainly the development community, we have expectations that we'll get some help there as it moves along. So an important information point to share with folks that we're talking to. Then you go ahead with the last thing there. So thank you. So, oh, and there's Alex. Sorry, it was ahead of myself. I thought I moved more.
You feel free to jump in.
You're gonna tell us how to treat them.
By the way, John sold our road show. We'll just say Taylor Swift is opening for us. My pun here is a bit of a wink, but we are trying to establish a kind of very easily recognizable, consistent, and aggressive way to project into the future with the development when it comes to sustainability, climate preparedness. The vision, which is part of the vision statement, or pulled out from the vision statement, again, to advance toward the zero carbon future, to exhibit best practices. And we want to establish as a goal kind of a minimum threshold of LEED silver, but we really want to push beyond that. So, you know, I think if we think of this neighborhood as being built for today by today's standards, I think we're going to sell ourselves short a little bit. And we really want to be thinking about this neighborhood as what will we have wanted to have built 10 years from now. So we kind of have to get a little bit further out there than what today's standard practices are. And that comes into, you know, a lot of detail, but I want to make sure that we keep this top of mind as we go forward. The community asked for it in the master plan. The community is very interested in this. And again, this is a terrific opportunity for us to really build something in from the get-go that will propel us forward. And so, you know, LEED silver is kind of price of entry these days. I mean, it's not everywhere, but that has moved into a kind of acceptable minimum threshold. What we'd like to do is not end there, but start there and look at ways to incentivize investments beyond that in development. Next page. So what does that mean? Basically, we need to, you know, that's a nice aspiration, and that needs to be executable in our processes. And we've already gone to market with an RFI, which we wanted to do, but we didn't have necessarily the benefit of all of the kind of horsepower that we're going to want to have on sustainability moving forward. It's going to take coordination between the city and RDC teams, obviously all of you, the owner's representative, sustainability consultants, if we deem that that is an additional resource we want to put on this. It's been tentatively budgeted, but it remains to be seen how that need gets filled. And then potential budgetary support, as I mentioned, to fill that. So the exercise is going to require us to look at everything pre-development. So how do we bake this, the right vision and the right language and the right expectations in the RFIs as they go out to the market? So we got to get ahead of this. We got to bake it in so that when we're putting stuff out in the market, we're attracting the right kind of developers. That'll also, come into play not only for RFIs, but as we're out there doing Taylor Swift concerts and road shows, we want to make sure the communication is very clear about what our expectations are. We want it to be baked in and have it baked into the infrastructure planning and the build out. So again, we're not trying to slap sustainability onto this after the fact. We're really making it part of the upfront and making it very deliberate planning effort. So what you see here are the engagement phases. Again, goal setting, which we've done, I think, documentation. So anything that goes out, whether it's solicitations or communications, we want it all reflecting our vision for this. Excuse me. When we do that and we get development proposals back, we're also going to want to have some help in vetting those proposals and determining whether or not they meet, muster and looking at through a sustainability lens to decide whether or not development A, which may seem fine, is from a sustainability perspective materially different than the development B proposal, and which one do we like more. So there are going to be a lot of different metrics that we're going to be looking at, but this has to be one of them. Otherwise, it will be an afterthought and we will miss our opportunity. And then with that baseline of sustainability and LEED silver plus, hopefully gold and beyond, the certification of all of that, is there a role that we can take to help developers actually certify, right? And so one thing that we can do is we can establish a neighborhood LEED threshold, and what that does is it allows us to start to credit points because of the things that we're doing. And you can actually take some of those points and they can accrue to a developer, and that developer therefore kind of starts ahead, right? And so it becomes a bit of a marketing opportunity for us to say, hey, we're putting some stuff on the table here, which we know we are. We're putting the green way, we're putting a lot of other things, but this is one of the things we can put on the table. And we can say we are investing in and preparing this for a threshold above what you may be working with in other communities, but we're putting that in to help you get to the next level. And so again, I hope 5 years from now, 10 years from now, our future selves look back at this and say they were thinking about it at the time they were supposed to, they baked it in the way they were supposed to, and that's how we ended up with a really great neighborhood, which, by the way, is being much more marketable to the 15-year-old who will be 25 10 years from now than not doing it. So there's an upside in that as well. So we just want to make sure that we call that out at this time. We'll do it periodically, but we're thinking hard about it. And we want to make sure that from a CBCI perspective, you all have that top of mind as we go into the next phases.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about how you all have thought about how the sustainability goals and in particular the kind of certification components of the sustainability goals for the community relate to or affect affordability?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about that because, and in fact, we've had some practical experience. So when the UDO was revised and went to market, the Unified Development Ordinance, anti-acronym guy, they went to market and said, hey, developer, you can either be really sustainable or you can have some affordable housing and you'll get some great benefits if you pick one of those things, right? And then what we ended up learning very quickly was that inadvertently we created a tension between those two objectives and we want both. And so one of the things that they did when they revised the Unified Development Ordinance was to basically, this is a simple way of saying it, but they said 1 + 1 = 3. So actually, if you meet both of those objectives, you have better cumulative benefit than if you meet one or the other objectives, right? So it's better to try to do everything. So we're trying to break down the tension between those two. The problem, as we all know, is that there's a financial impact to having a more sustainable building. There's a financial impact to having greater affordability. So there's definitely a financial question that has to be dealt with. But if we can create an incentive structure whereby someone who is attracted to the neighborhood, to come and build, shares our vision, and we set up an incentive structure that allows for the delivery of both to be worth more to them than just one or the other or none, we would accept, then we have the ability to actually achieve those goals.
Yeah, I guess I'm talking more about the pass-through implications to the people who live in either as a renter or buy.
Oh,
Right,
that's right.
so, yeah, because I think it's fantastic, and, obviously, we wanna have a community that is aesthetically appealing, and also there are long-term benefits as well that are also financial to having sustainable buildings that have lower energy consumption costs. But that also comes with upfront costs in particular. And so I'm just wondering how you all have thought about balancing those, because I mean, just from a brass tacks perspective, getting certified lead costs money, right? So just by definition, having that certification means that it's going to be more expensive for people to buy in or rent.
Alex, I can also offer, if you'd like, maybe some synopsis of some of the conversations we've been having with developers about this, because it's also about, is it truly in their main is it a specialty thing that they do, or is it just part of their main business? And I know John and I have talked to, and Alex have talked to several developers in the Indianapolis and this area that say, our renters are expecting it, right? They're expecting to have lower long-term cost on their utilities that you're going to get when you get a LEED kind of silver building. Some say it's an extra, but we've had many who have said, we do it every time. It's just what we do now. So are we over the hump with all developers to the point where they understand we're going to pay a little bit extra upfront, knowing that our renters can save on that in terms of the utilities in the long term? That is yet to be seen, and I'm sure there are many developers who don't make it part of their standard practice. But I was personally pleasantly surprised at how many we found are doing that as a matter of their standard.
We have experience here in Bloomington. There's a Beeline Heights building over on Rogers, right? Had a core developer project called Moving Forward. It was done in 2018, I think it was. And it's actually a good example of just which is it's an affordable housing complex. With the Moving Forward program, which was a state program, is designed to really look at more than just rent when it comes to affordability, right? They were looking at, which is why this location was actually appealing. So the fact that it's within walking distance of employment in itself is an affordability play. They have a canopy of solar associated with it. A lot of the stuff that goes into the guts of the building actually speaks to what you're talking about, which is it ties the notion of affordability and sustainability into the same execution, right? So, again, I think we have an opportunity, as Deb says, if we don't scare off half the developers, right? We're not doing our job, because there's only going to be a group. There's going to be a group that sees the vision, wants to play in that vision, and we're hoping that through some of these roadshows and communications that we'll be able to really draw some attention to us.
Follow-up question. So what are some of the incentives you talked about to make both of those happen? Sustainability and affordability, what you were talking about?
Well, so, I talked a little bit about having a baseline of points that are available to someone, right? So that means that they have to do less work. We actually talked about the possibility of bearing the cost of the certification itself, right? It might be more efficient to be doing that in a centralized way than to depend on each developer to do it themselves, right? So you could consolidate that cost and relieve them of that cost. I think there's an opportunity if someone wants to do more than the baseline, wants to go to gold or silver or beyond, that we might be able to look at ways to incentivize in a more traditional way, whether it's statements or that sort of thing. So looking at you know, the incremental cost of each step above that threshold and looking at trying to push them into that place because it has long-term value to us.
I would also say that it may be beneficial for us to bring the planning team into one of the future meetings because the overlay district has additional incentives specifically in it that focuses on sustainability and affordability. Like for instance, increased height, you can increase height available to you on the building if you do more affordability. So the overlay district, I think in my simplified manner is that it contemplated that the current UDO wasn't really created for this kind of urban neighborhood. So what changes do we need to make in order to make it easy? And I'm going to do a couple examples. There's a certain amount of parking that is necessary. Well, that minimum for parking was taken away because this is on a bus line, right? It's got other transportation opportunities. And so there's a recognition of that. But it also added some incentives that really focus at helping the developers also get to that affordability and sustainability. So it may be a worthwhile if this group would like to hear that, if they can go into greater detail.
Alex, did you have to answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Did you have additional information to share here?
I think that's it.
Alex, did we have some sustainability factors? This may have been before your time, but Flourish, when Ann did that development project, it was single family homes off of South Rockport, Rogers, Evergreen. Yeah, Evergreen. That brought in a lot of sustainability factors.
Yeah, I'm somewhat, that was before my time, so I don't know the mechanism of how, that was actually an RDC project.
Well, our RDC funded it,
Yeah.
but Ann managed it.
Yeah.
Well, it was more of a federal home program that funded most of that project, and so made it LEED certified by using home dollars.
Suppose that it's encouraging to note that RFI 1 required all these things we've been talking about, had responses. If there was no market for doing it, and I know that responses haven't been reviewed and they're not all out, that there was interest. And there were these, maybe above and beyond what some developers would normally consider part of the development cost is encouraging. And I would say, just my opinion would be the infrastructure investment the city's making is reducing the cost of development considerably. There's things that'll be there that developers would normally have to pay for, and they may not have to pay for all of it, they may have to pay for some of it. That's obviously decisions that have yet to be made depending review of those proposals. So but those are all good questions. That's why we're doing these kind of understanding the premises behind development goals that we have at the site, so we can better understand as we start to get into decision-making mode. We're not there yet, but we won't be there. We'll be there fairly soon. So I did hear two things that I thought should be on our next agenda. I know there's one more topic to talk about Ready Grant, and then I'm going to have public comment. Try to stick to our 5 o'clock or close there to end meeting time. And that's that updates on our infrastructure would probably be helpful at our next meeting, just understanding what is going on in phase 1 East and other developments, that other infrastructure costs that might be assumed by the city to get the project going. And then this update on planning and how it relates to sustainability and affordability so that we better understand the Unified Development Ordinance and its impacts on the project. I'm also going to ask the board to think about other things you'd like to include on the next agenda. We don't have to discuss it at the moment unless you have something on top of mind. You can send that to me. I usually meet with Kaisa about a week in advance of our agenda to set it and send it out for you all to take a look at. So if you have something you'd like to see that we're not contemplating, please send those items to me or give me a call. Mayor?
Thanks. I just very briefly, these are really good questions about balancing the factors. And as you are stepping into this custodial role and development role, I just want to point out this is indeed a once in a century opportunity to take 24 acres down and turn them into something new and encourage the ambitious view and the patience that this may not happen as quick, I mean, I'm an impatient person, but it may not happen as quickly as any one of us would like to see, but the role of trying to make sure we do it right and do it in a way that 10 years from now and 50 years from now, people will say, wow, they really rare opportunity. And we're custodians and stewards of the opportunity. And I just want to thank you who are in seats on behalf of the community to really think that way about it this year.
Ready Grant, I think, are we at that?
Yeah, just maybe just a quick view of that going through the state legislature right now is I think last count $500 million worth of future ready grant. Rumor has it it's going to be tied to housing and some other things that are infrastructure that may be important to us. So it's something to keep in mind. I think it's going to be something that we just all need to talk about, but it really begs you heard John talk about the ready grant for Jackson Street, but there was another ready grant that was for $2 million. We had 1.8 million, then 2 million for the utilities for Allen. Is that right? It's a competition between the two. So it's important to note that it's a leaders.
No, I already did the math, but I was 200,000.
So the bottom line is, Hopewell is already, and the city is already benefiting from some of the ready money, but there is a lot more ready money coming through the state. Now, there are other non-city funds that we need to continue to look at, because as you saw the map earlier, we still have a lot of red on our map that needs infrastructure. And so we really just need to, no stone needs to be, every stone needs to be overturned there. But it's an awareness that we need to figure out, how do we move that forward so that we're ready? And I've heard under good source that the ready grant applications are going to come open up in January next year, which feels like a long time away, but we all know it really is.
So to channel the mayor, what does ready stand
Regional economic development. Corporate initiatives.
Say that again.
So it's the regional economic development. No, regional economic advancement, development
Initiative.
initiatives is the last thing. It's money to be able to do stuff.
Yeah. She knows,
I'll tell you.
Money to do stuff.
And so I said we would be working with, well, staff would be working on.
Well, I
putting
think
those
that's what we'll
grants.
have to figure out, who is the leaders of this. And also they're really looking from a regional perspective, so it won't be just the city submitting, it will be a big happy group here of other partners, so.
Yeah. It actually stands for the Regional Economic Acceleration and Development Initiative.
They made it jump.
Which is why we always say, I'll say ready.
And to be clear in these, that in this particular case, whereas, federal money is different, that the region is run by regional opportunities initiatives, it's Indiana Uplands. And they were very supportive, very helpful. They're the ones ultimately that submit a project into the state for evaluation. So when we talk about ready opportunities, we're really talking about us pitching ROI,
Oh,
getting their attention. And
two steps.
Yeah, so, but they're helpful. It's not just a judge. They're actually looking for ways that they're and,
I mean, one of the challenges here is affordability, right? Housing, it's not just in the city, right? It's all over. And so that as a platform, and again, we'll see what it comes through the budget, what are going to be the strings attached to, and what do they really want to spend the money on? But it sounds like there could be some things out by the line.
Great. All right, that was our last agenda item. It's time for any public comment, and guys, I don't know if anyone on, there's one that's not a city staff person or board member in this room. Is anybody online that would like to have any comment? No, so,
Somebody in chat, is that somebody in here?
Yeah.
okay, next meeting is May 3rd. Do I have that correct?
Yep.
2 weeks. Agenda topics that you'd like to send me within a week or so, if you don't mind, if you have anything you'd like to know about. With that, same time, 4 o'clock, same room. I think this is our standing meeting room for the foreseeable future. And any other feedback that you have before we close, happy to undertake. All right, we have a motion to adjourn. So second.
Second.
That's all we need. Thanks, everyone.